Welcome to the Black Emporium. Here I will show you how I made this book from scratch. So what you will need is parchment paper, some strong sewing thread, hard cardstock, a sharp scalpel, Elmer's glue or wood glue, and you need some type of nice fabric. First thing you want to do is get your paper and you want to fold it neatly in half. I usually use the corner of my desk or my cutting mat to make sure I get a fine edge. You want to have about 5 to 6 or so pages of these. Afterwards, what you do next is you take a nice ruler. Now, I would prefer to use a metal ruler as opposed to a plastic one. And you want to put your ruler on the line that you just made at the center of your page, and you want to go in against the ruler, make a fine straight cut all the way to the end. And then you want to repeat this with every page that you folded. Next, what you do is you repeat the process. You take the piece of paper that you already cut, fold it in half again, and you recut it. Now when cutting with the ruler, you want to make sure you put a lot of pressure down on the ruler. That way the ruler doesn't slip or get misaligned and your cut is uneven. And after that, we are done. That is our finished page. We're making a very small journal here, like a pocket-sized book. So after you've folded all those mini pages together, you want to stack them into 4s. What we call signatures. Each signature should have 4 pages, and right now we should have about 5 signatures. 5 signatures, 4 pages each. So take one of your signatures and put it against your ruler. Now I measure in centimeters. Basically, you want to find the center of a signature. Right now, my ruler says it's about 5.5 centimeters is the very center of the page. So you mark that with a pencil, then move, I would say, a centimeter or an inch away from it and mark it again, an inch again, mark it again. You want a total of 5 marks going along your page. Next, you want to get some binder clips, and you want to put them at the edges of your, what we call a text block. The signatures together form what we call a text block. And you want to stick your binder clips on the edges of it. A long time ago, I used to have a book press that I made from scratch using scrap wood and carriage bolts. But I don't know where the hell it went, but unfortunately, I'm using what I have at my disposal. Now you want to take your text block and you want to put your ruler against it, and you want to kind of extend those marks to cover the whole entire back of the text block. That way it marks where you want to put your sewing thread. Make certain that you properly mark your text block, meaning that you want the line as thin as possible and as straight as possible. That way it's a lot more accurate when you're sewing your pages through it. It's now time to punch your holes through the markings that you made on your signatures. Now you could use, what I do, a sewing needle, or you could use a owl, and you want to just basically punch through the marking all the way through. You want to repeat this with every mark that you have on the signature with each signature. Here's a side note, you also want to make sure that you are properly stacking your signatures in the correct order that you did it. That way, when you're sewing through, your pages are not misaligned and slightly off. So you want to start off with about, I would say, 4 feet or a yard of sewing thread. Put it through the eye of the needle, and you want to tie both ends together. This way, your sewing thread is extra thick and strong. You want to tie basically a quadruple knot at the end of your sewing thread. That way it's big enough so that it won't slip through the holes that you just made in your signatures. And here's a professional tip, well, unprofessional tip from me. If you do not have wax for your thread, what you can use, what I found, is actually chapstick. Chapstick will lubricate the thread and make sure that it doesn't knot up or bind up, which it still happens because, well, it's chapstick, but it's better than nothing. Let me emphasize this, you want to be very careful when handling the sewing needle, as you do not want to tear your pages. basically just guide the sewing needle through the hole you made on the far right edge of the signature, and you want to basically guide it through and pull it gently until it's taut. Then, when the needle is on the inside of a page, you want to return it to the next hole going out of the page, then going back in and out again until you reach the very edge. Then you want to return, basically flip what you're doing. You basically want to make a solid line all the way through the page of sewing thread, making double sure that your sewing thread is taut and tight. Not too much that it'll rip, but enough that way it's snug and fits well. Like I said earlier, once you get to the end of a signature, you want to return to the previous hole that you stitched, going in and out and in and out. Once you return the needle through the original first hole that you made, you want to basically make a loop and a knot. Just take your sewing needle and go underneath of the sewing thread and return through the hole. I like to do this a couple of times, that way I'm sure that the knot is snug and tight. Once you make your knot, you want to take your sewing needle and you want to stick it back through the hole and gently, and I repeat, gently pull the knot through to the back of a signature. That way it's secure. So what you basically do now is you repeat the process with the next signature, going through the rightmost hole on your signature and coming back out again. Now the difference here is when you come back out, you want to go underneath of the thread on the signature below your next one. Basically go underneath of the sewing thread, then come back out on the other side, and you want to put your sewing needle back through the hole that you initially sewn through. And you basically want to go in and out, over, under and over your sewing thread that you have to attach the two signatures together. As I said, you want to go underneath of sewing thread below your signature, go back up on the other side, and go through the initial hole that you just went through, and then on to the next one over and over again. You want to do this until the very end of a signature. Then what you do next is you get your next signature, your third one, and you basically repeat the process. You go through the leftmost hole and then back through. With your third signature, what you do to attach it to the rest of the signatures is once you pull the needle through the second hole, you want to go in between the two signatures beneath the third one. You want to go in between and then loop it around basically the knot you made on the two signatures, and then back out and then through the original hole that you just sewn through. Please pardon me if this seems monotonous and boring, but this is the most monotonous and boring part of bookbinding, sewing the pages and signatures together. You basically just keep on stacking signatures, looping around and going between the signatures with your sewing thread and going back through to properly attach your signatures. That way they're strong. And once you get to the last signature, the last hole, you want to put it back through and basically do the same thing you did the first time with the first signature, is make a knot on the inside and pull it through gently. Then cut the thread and you're all done with the text block. Alrighty then, let's move on to the cover. Now for me, I like to use old books and recycle the hard cardstock that is inside the covers. Basically, you can go to your local library, and if they have any damaged hardcover books or really old books that no one is ever getting, you could just take those or ask for them, pay for them, like maybe $1. And you basically take the covers off and with a scalpel or a knife, and you can reuse them to make your own books. So the way I get the measurements for the cover is I take the text block and I use a pencil and trace it onto the hardcover. And I add about, I would say, 5mm or so. That way there's a bit of overlap, like an actual book. And then I take my scalpel and ruler and I do the same thing I did with the pages. But this time I'm going much gently and just taking my time, going steady. That way the edges of the cover are straight. So for the very back of the book or the spine, I use more of the recycled covers that I've used, and I basically cut it into shape to match the width of the text block. And I add about 5 or so millimeters to both ends. That way there's more overlap and it's even. So what you do now is you take your fabric. For me, I chose this lovely black damask pattern. I really love the sort of thing like that wallpaper look. And hell, we're making a Gothic, pocketbook, you know what I mean? Might as well choose a black damask pattern. What I do next is I take my front and back covers and my spine of the book, and I put them on the inside of the fabric, leaving the pattern on the outside. And I take my ruler and I basically put it against the covers and the spine. That way I make sure it's straight, and I keep it about 3 or so millimeters apart from the spine. The front and back covers, keep them 3mm apart. That way there's some space for the book to actually close and open, and it just looks nice to me. Then I just take a silver Sharpie and I gently trace along the spine and front and back covers. You don't want to go too hard with this because the silver will bleed through and show up on the front cover. Basically, the purpose of it is to mark where the cover and the spine is going to be. That way, later on when you glue it, you know where to glue. After tracing with the silver Sharpie, you want to take your Elmer's glue, or honestly, yes, I do prefer to use wood glue, but I don't have that right now. And you want to put a nice, kind of thick coat on the cover and spine and the back cover. And you want to just gently put it into place, and be sure to get within the lines. Epstein didn't kill himself? While we sit and wait for the glue to dry on the cover, we're going to be moving on to the end pages. Now, I like to use hard black cardstock. You can use any relatively thick paper. You want it to be thicker than the text block paper that you used. To make this go quicker, I usually keep an extra page on the side that was the original size that I did to fold and cut into pages for the text block. It's essentially the same thing. You just take your ruler and you take your scalpel and you carefully cut the cardstock into the proper size. Then you fold it like the rest of your pages you did for the text block. Then you're going to take some Elmer's glue and you're going to put a thin line of glue on the folded part of the page you just made. Then you just place your 2 end pages on either side of a text block, and you can use either your book press or binder clips, or if you don't even have those, you can just use a heavy book to hold it down and keep it in place. So moving back onto the cover, you're going to take your silver Sharpie again, and you're going to basically measure and put dots around each corner. I measure this about, for a book this small, I usually do about 1 centimeter or so. Now the purpose of this is you're going to be basically marking lines along the border of your cover. You're going to be taking your scalpel once again and cutting along the lines that you just made. Now, a little trick I've learned a while ago is to basically cut a slit, like at an angle. You want to be basically making trapezoids. When folding the fabric over the book cover itself, this will make it look a lot neater and nicer looking, and it seems to be a lot more secure in my opinion. So for this part, this is why I prefer using wood glue as opposed to Elmer's glue. Wood glue is a lot more tackier and holds on more and faster than school Elmer's glue. You're just going to take a little bit of Elmer's glue and you're going to go along the exposed fabric that you're going to fold over onto the page. You want to make sure that you're doing this tight and pressing really hard in order to get it to stick. If there's a little bit of a gap where it's starting to lift off of the hardcover, you're just going to take a scalpel and you're going to dollop a little glue in there and kind of slide it in underneath and continue on pressing firmly. Alright, so now that the cover is done, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to this text block to make the edges more straight and even. Right now it's pretty uneven and ragged looking. I used to take a razor and basically scrape on the pages, and that ended up giving me a bunch of cuts, and it was not a good experience. So right now we're going to head to Staples, and they actually provide a service to do this exact thing. So, let's go on an adventure. So, I went to Staples, and I asked the fine gentleman behind the counter at the printing section, alright, so I need you to cut this section, and this section, and there's a reason for that. So, pardon me, I'm just a little, annoyed. So the reason why you only cut 3 sections of a text block and not cut the section with the sewing thread is because what happens is the cutter cuts through the whole thing, so I have to start over. But oh well. I ended up getting some new paper. So yeah. I'm gonna have to make a whole new text block. So I just got back from Staples. They did it right this time. So there was a little bit of problem with the machine they use. It's like I don't know exactly how it works, but it's like a buzz cutter, I'm pretty sure. And there was a little bit of problem with the wobbliness of my text block. Now, I could just fix that with some glue when I put the text block in with the cover. But they did a very good job. So, now that that's done, it's time to move on to attaching the ribbon and just basically putting it all together. So I like to use red ribbon for bookbinding, especially when I make black books. I feel like red and black, they go perfectly together. Now you can get ribbon at Michael's, Home Goods, Joann Fabrics, Walmart. Basically you get ribbon anywhere, but I prefer to get off Etsy or some more, small shops. Now, you're going to want to have about 5 inches or so of ribbon. I know 5 inches seems small, but trust me, it's average. And you're going to want to cut the ends of the ribbon, at least one end. You want to cut it in a sort of V with a scalpel. Now you can get rid of the excess ribbon, like the little fuzzies, with either a lighter or just carefully scrape the scalpel onto it. Now when attaching the ribbon to the book, you want to put a decent amount of glue on the back of it. Either do about half of the back of the text block, or it's better to just do the whole spine of the book. That way it adds a little bit of more stability and structure, and it stops that wobbling I was talking about earlier. You as well want to basically coat the end of the ribbon that you attach to the book with glue as well. And you want to basically lay them on top of each other and basically just press them down hard onto the spine of the book and leave them sit there and let it dry before touching it, because if you just tug on it or pull on it or move it around, then it's easily gonna come off. So now, how do we attach the text block to the book cover? Well, you're going to take your Elmer's glue once again, and you're gonna basically heavily coat the spine of the book, as well as the 2 end pages in glue. Be very mindful about the glue. You do not want to get glue on the inside of the book or on the cover of the book. Just give it a nice even coat. Okay, now this is the part where it's going to get very difficult and potentially messy. So you want to lay your text block flat into the book cover to try and cover up the exposed cardboard on the inside. And you want to gently close it and basically you want to maneuver the text block all the way down to the spine. Once you close the book, you can basically just take your fingers and tap or gently press down onto the text block until it reaches the back of the spine. Meanwhile, you want to have the book closed because it's weird and finicky. You just have to get a feel for it. Now, if you mess up and you misalign something, your best salvation is to just gently take out the text block and try again, basically. It takes a little wiggle room and finesse to do it, but over time you'll get the hang of it. And once your text block is in the book, you basically just want to close it and put heavy weight on top of it, or just do what I do, use binder clips to seal it closed and let it dry for a good long while. Alright, so right here you have a perfectly finished book, but to me, I like to add a little decoration or something nice to the center as something eye-catching. So for me, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this it's basically an old wooden cutout of a raven or a bird, and I'm just going to paint it black, and then I want to paint it silver. Now, what I'm using right here is called silver brush and weave. Now, this stuff you want to be careful with because this is actual silver, as in there's actual silver metal inside of it, and silver could be toxic, potentially. So you want to basically dry brush it onto whatever it is you want to paint. I use silver brush and weave as a detailer, basically. Say you have a nice looking, I don't know, something gothic, basically, and you want to have the shadows or the negative spaces of that object to pop. Well, I use silver brush and weave for that, where if I gently brush it onto the surface, the sunken bits will pop out more, basically showing more fine detail. And for this specifically, I have a dedicated jar of rubbing alcohol to clean my brushes with, as soap and water will just not do anything. Alright, so last thing you want to do with your ornament, I do this a lot with wooden objects that I use as decoration. I coat it with polyurethane, or I spray it with Krylon Crystal Clear or a triple thick lacquer. At least something to add a little bit of protection so that the paint or whatever won't rub off. To attach the centerpiece to the book, what I do first is I lay it on top of the book and I try and find the center as close as possible. And I take a pencil and I gently trace over it. I'm not sure if you can see it that well on the camera, but I have a nice, small, nearly invisible line that I could see with my own eyes. Then I use either super glue or Gorilla Glue, or some fast-acting glue that's also super strong that won't cause any harm to the book, and I put that onto the ornament or into the space I just created, and I apply it thinly onto the object. And I just use binder clips once again and leave it on there for a good while. So when the glue is dry, it's time to take off the binder clips and check it all work. I am particularly proud of this book. This is the smallest journal that I've made so far, and maybe in the future I'll make one even smaller. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this bookbinding tutorial, and until next time, my name is Vivian Black. This was a Black Emporium, and I would just say to you, good night, sleep tight, let the bats bite. I will see you in the darkness.